Welcome to Sailing Avanti. We are Gerard and Jacqueline, sailing our 41-foot monohull Avanti around the world from Cape Town, South Africa.
Wakey, wakey. Time to wake up.
A lot of sailors dream about circumnavigating the globe, but like us, it's difficult to know where to start in planning this. What I can tell you though is, if you plan to do it on a shoestring budget like us, there won't be any long hot showers, only a quick salty dip with a freshwater rinse.
Not having a fridge does mean that we can't really keep fresh milk. It tends to go off. So for breakfast we mainly use powdered milk for our porridge, and only one of us likes warm milk, so I make it first, use it for my my porridge, and then we heat up some for Gerard. Today we're going to look at how we decide where we're going to next. So what websites we use, what books we read, and also what apps we use during passage and even planning for passage. We'll also have a look at the visas that South Africa needs before we leave our country.
Then we'll also have a look at our plan and our planned route over the next 2 years to complete our circumnavigation to get back to Cape Town.
Before we get into detail, we quickly make a run to Alexis, the one big supermarket in this small town, to grab dinner supplies for this evening.
We just heard that pineapples in South Africa is on a special for 10 Rand each. 10 Rand. This pineapple is 46 EC. 46 EC. And they grow them here. I don't know. We're not having pineapple.
There's not a whole lot of fresh veggies in today. Every day is a mixed bag of fruit of what you can find, and the fresh stuff really doesn't last without being in a freezer or fridge that we don't have. So it looks like we are on a lentil shepherd's pie today. Lentils.
When we decided to plan our circumnavigation around the world about 6 years ago, we were complete novices in terms of cruising the world oceans and what type of boat you need and what gear you need on the boat, and also the routes that you can take within the time frame we have. So we decided to look for information that could help us to make these decisions, and we came across a few books that was written by Jimmy Cornell. He's really the guru of ocean sailing or cruising, and we started looking to buy these books. They're quite pricey, so we looked for specials, and we once in a while we saw a special online, and we started to buy his books. So the first book we used and started off with is called World Cruising Essentials. This book gives you all the basics and essentials that you need in terms of a boat to basically start with a circumnavigation. It also tells you what's nice to have, and it discusses pros and cons between different types of boats, different types of gear that you have on boats. So this helped us a lot to make our decision in terms of to just start looking for a boat. In South Africa there's not a lot of cruising boat options. It's not like the Mediterranean with a lot of boats available. So this book really helped us to just filter through the boats that was available for sale even before we started looking to buy a boat. The second book that we got from Jimmy Cornell is called World Voyage Planner. Now this book really gives you guidance in terms of what is possible and what routes are typically followed. So it gives you different time frames and slots. If you would like to do a 2-year circumnavigation or a 3-year circumnavigation, it tells you where you have to be at certain times of the year. It also discusses weather in broad terms, in terms of the macro weather patterns around the oceans, so that you know which times are best to tackle those oceans and which times you can't actually sail across those oceans because of hurricanes, for instance. So this book really helps you to just put that plan together and put some timelines to it. Then the third book is called World Cruising Routes, also by Jimmy Cornell. This book focuses in more detail on specific routes. So whether you want to sail across the South Atlantic from Cape Town to St. Helena to Brazil, it would give you a little bit more detail in terms of the weather patterns, the best time to do it, what is the basic info on the stops you want to make, and also things like if you can provision or if there's boat yards available along these routes. So a little bit more detail in terms of the different routes between that would form part of your circumnavigation. Then the fourth book that we really using the most these days is called World Cruising Destinations. So this focuses less on the routes to get to somewhere, but it focuses on the destination. So it talks about specific bays and specific islands or countries, and it also gives you broad information in terms of clearing in there, getting there, what's the best season to be there, and what's the best bays to be there. It doesn't give a lot of detail because there are so many destinations, but it also points you to different or more resources that you can find to get some information on these destinations. Then what we use with this is called pilot guides. Now the pilot guides we have electronically on the computer, and that really helps you to get a lot more detail on the specific destinations. It helps you to navigate into these bays. It tells you where anchorages are better, in which spot of the bays. It tells you if there's crime, for instance, or if it's relatively safe. It gives you more detail in terms of clearing in and not clearing in. And it's really, really helpful if you arrive after ocean crossing in an unknown bay to just get in there safely and comfortably.
But along with those types of books, we also use a website called Noonsite, and that's also a place where people have left previous information. Now, Noonsite's a bit more updated than some of these books, because some of these books have obviously been written a few years ago, and the same with the pilot guides, where we have arrived in a bay maybe, and the immigration office has moved, and the books and some of the Noonsite updates aren't as updated. And the one problem that we find with Noonsite is a lot of the information on Noonsite tends to be there's comments of agents. So for instance, when we were planning our trip to Dominica, all the pilot guides and books said you have to use an agent when clearing in, and when we got there we saw there were boats clearing in with no agent. So agents, or they tend to get information from people that sometimes advertise their business instead of giving the whole honest truth. So what we find, what we use then is actually a very nice other website called No Foreign Land. That's what we'll use when we're already on land to find the latest immigration office. It tells you where's gas, where you can find water, where you can get a big supermarket. So that website is really updated information with reviews on a specific bay when we've already arrived. And another app that we use is called Navily. And with Navily, it gives you people's reviews of the bay that they're in. So it actually gives you a grading if it's a roadly bay or not, with some reviews. And if you can actually see the boats that are in the bay, and you can actually contact them and say, look, we want to grab a mooring ball. Can you see if there's mooring balls around you? And people can actually interact on this app as well. So those are the apps that we use quite often, or more often now than obviously when we planned the trip.
Yeah, and we didn't even know about those apps until we actually spoke to some cruisers in Suriname. So a lot of our information, although it's a little bit lagging sometimes, when you speak to other cruisers, they share all this good information, and without that interaction we would have known a lot less. So yeah, it really helps to speak to other cruisers, and then you can get knowledge of these apps and you share this information as you carry on.
But it's time for a sandwich. We're having some tuna sandwiches with a little bit of fresh tomato that we have left over, and that'll be lunch before we get into some serious topics.
As South African passport holders, we have quite a few challenges entering some countries without visas. We found quite a lot of conflicting information when contacting the embassies of these countries from South Africa. So what worked for us was to contact the immigration departments on the island directly to make sure of the visa requirements prior to our arrival. In some cases, our US visas that's valid for 10 years gave us access to Anguilla, for instance, and we will use those to enter Bonaire and Curaçao. This afternoon I'm tasting a Hurricane Reef IPA. I'm very excited actually, because you don't find a lot of craft type beers in the Caribbean. So this one we found in Grenada, or actually in Carriacou, which is part of Grenada, and they basically sell it at most of the restaurants and the shops. It's brewed in Grenada, traditional style IPA. It's got 6.5% alcohol. It's a 275 ml bottle, and yeah, it smells good, so let's see how it tastes. It's got quite a fruity taste, not as fruity as some IPAs. So even Jackie likes this one because it's not that fruity. It doesn't have that strong pear taste. It is still a little bit bitter, like an IPA should be, and it's really refreshing and easy drinking. So I actually really like this IPA. I think it's thus far it's really my favorite beer in the Caribbean. So I can really recommend this one. It costs about $6 Eastern Caribbean dollars in the pub, and they're a little bit cheaper. You can actually buy them in bulk, so you can buy 24 of them for 95 EC, and then you get something back when you return it for deposit. So yeah, really nice, and I'm going to score this one a 9 out of 10.
So after reading all the books and watching many YouTube videos on getting an idea of what our monthly expenses would be for our type of lifestyle, we finally decided on a budget. We knew what our savings needed to look like. And then we found Avanti, and if you want to see what she looked like and what the bare bones of a cruising boat should, well, we thought we needed, you can jump over to the boat tour video that we did a few weeks ago. And then we decided on a 2.5 year circumnavigation route, so that's about 30 months that we decided on. And look, we know that most sailors write their plans at low tide, waiting for the sea to take it away, but so far we've been lucky enough to keep to the route that we've planned so far.
As you know, we left Cape Town late December 2021 and crossed the South Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Eastern Caribbean. We explored the Eastern Caribbean, heading up north, and are now back down south in Carriacou, just north of Grenada. From Grenada, we plan to start heading west to the ABC Islands, which is a group of Dutch islands, from there to Colombia and onwards to Panama towards the end of this year. We want to leave ourselves enough time to get Avanti ready for the Pacific crossing by taking her out of the water and booking our spot to transit the canal with enough time to spare. The next portion of our journey from Grenada all the way to Panama, via some stops at the ABCs and Colombia, we plan to start heading west in the end of August or beginning of September. It's not the ideal time, but we have to make our way to Panama to eventually get there by the end of the year. So it is still within hurricane season, but it is relatively short sails to our next stop. So if you plan it well and you just keep an eye on the weather, we feel that we can make shorter, safer journeys to get there eventually. Then in Panama we have to arrive, and we need to book a spot to transit through the canal about a month before we want to, because sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to just wait from the time you get confirmation on the spot to go through the canal until the time you can actually transit. We also plan to take out the boat in Panama before we transit the canal, because we have to do quite a lot of maintenance. We have to do the anti-fouling and some small things to make sure Avanti is 100% ready for the Pacific crossing, because there's not a lot of boat yards and facilities in the Pacific. One of our biggest expenses will also be to transit the canal. It can, for our size boat, and if you use an agent, that makes it a little bit easier. We still have to decide if we are going to use one or not, but it's roughly $2,000. So it's quite a big expense that we need to also plan for the end of the year. We plan to start our Pacific crossing from Panama City all the way to the Marquesas as soon as the tropical storm season in the Pacific will allow us, which is about end of February. This is to stretch our stay in the French Polynesian islands, to really explore these islands, including some islands like Bora Bora, Fiji, the Samoas, as well as Vanuatu.
From Vanuatu, we're heading west over to the Great Barrier Reef, and once we pass that, we'll also be visiting some family members that have recently moved to Australia. But our time there will be cut short by some of the big Pacific storms that run over the northern part of Australia.
Tropical storms in these oceans occur from about November until May. We therefore plan to go through the Torres Straits during September or October and arrive in Indonesia no later than end of November, so that we can miss these storms.
Once we arrive in the Indonesian waters, it will be a different pace for us, because we'll be there up until beginning of May, end of April. So this will be the longest that we'll be in a certain country or in a certain country's waters. Luckily there's lots of islands to explore, so I'm sure we won't get bored, and we're hoping some family and friends will actually come visit us in the time we spend there.
From Indonesia we plan to cross our last ocean, which is the Indian Ocean. We do plan to cross the South Indian Ocean, which can be quite challenging with quite heavy winds and sometimes gales to be expected. We will make a few stops at 2 very small Australian islands and then head quite a long distance all the way to Reunion Island, which is south of Madagascar. From here we'll go to Madagascar and eventually to Richards Bay, where we'll probably have a stop to rest and to attempt the further route all the way back to Cape Town to cross our wake and complete our circumnavigation.
So that was a whole lot of information, and I can't believe 6 months has already actually passed of our journey, but there's still 2 more exciting years to come, and really hope you enjoy the journey with us.
Thank you for watching, and please give us a comment or a like. It's free, or even subscribe to our channel if you want to get regular updates when these episodes are launched. Also, our Patreon link is given in the description below if you want to make a small contribution to the making of these videos. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.